Hey there guys, here's part 2 of all of semester 1 in Exploring Computer Science. It's one semester, so I guess that means this is it. In the previous video we covered some basics in terms of just creating the files and folders, linking the JavaScript up here in Dreamweaver and the CSS. And this entire video is going to be all about incorporating the JavaScript and kind of give you a refresher on what we're looking at. I'm going to right click up here in the tab, say open in browser. I'm going to open in Chrome because that's where we're going to be doing most of our work. And that's it. I've got a little anchor tag here in the form of a hyperlink that takes me to like some role-playing game information. Probably don't want that though, so I'm going to go in here and actually remove it for now because it's doing nothing. Looking back at our HTML, what we're working with right now, and to bring up that reference there, we've got an image here, we've got a banner here, we've got a link. Now I'm going to refresh this after saving, and that's it. I've just got this image here. I'm just going to go ahead and inspect this in the browser, and I can see there's the source of the image there. And I can kind of look at the content of my page and see what we got going on. But as you can see, nothing is going on here. I have this guy here, but I don't really have anything else, certainly. So I need to build out a place for other content, and I need to get down to work when it comes to JavaScript. So what our requirements for this project are, you've got variables, which, as you know, you can say, var potion, equals 10, and you end with a semicolon. You can do var level equals 1. Those are values, and var monster, equals grumpf, right? So each one of these things is terminated with a semicolon. Of course, you've got a variable here. We've got a string value here. We've got numerical values here. Those are our standard variables. But in this case, we're going to work with an object. I'm going to do var hero equals, and I'm going to use braces. And now we can give this guy some properties like name. And his name is going to be a string value of Dirk, right? And we want to put a comma on the end of there, and we're going to give him hit points or health. We'll just call it health if we can spell it right. And we'll give him a health of 100. That's a numerical value there. We're going to give him speed of, we'll give him 5, 4, 3. Let's go 3. All right. And yeah, we'll give him an attack value of, we'll go 10. Okay. In the last item in here, we don't have to put a comma against that. It may cause problems down the road, so just be aware of that. Anyway, so you got var hero. You may want to do var monster equals something, and then it's nice and easy to just come up here and grab these attributes, assuming that they're similar types of objects, and put that in there. Of course, the name, we're just going to grab from the value up here, and I can actually say the name is monster. Now the name is not monster. The name is going to be the value of this variable, so his name is actually grumpf. Just keep in mind that we can pass things back and forth like that. It's kind of useful. We're going to give him a health of 200. He's a healthy guy, and not 2,000. That'd be a little too healthy. But we're going to make him slower, and we'll say he's 1, and his attack is a little higher. So there we go. So now we have two objects that we can use there, and of course Dreamweaver starts lighting up with different things like missing semicolons. You're going to want to have that, because just like any variable up here, we terminate with those semicolons as soon as I hit Control S. This one says defined but never used, defined but never used, defined but never used. Well, we haven't used them yet because we're not doing anything with our any of these objects yet, or the variables. But this covers variables, and this covers objects, and we want to comment that in. Okay, so now we have objects. We might have an array of something, so we might say items, right? Var items equal, and then we can put in here, we can do, potion as a value. We can do magic wand and you can do like a backpack or something. Now I have 3 string values inside here, and then of course I can set some things up later on, but this array gives me some different opportunities and to mess around with that, but that basically fulfills the array. Now how I use it, of course, is going to make a big difference, but there we've got variables, objects, and an array. Now what are we going to do with all this stuff? Well, in order to do anything in JavaScript, we have to either use a function or write, out some kind of an operation. So I'm going to write the basic function for battle. Okay, so we're going to go function battle. Now there are 2 ways to write functions. We can do it like that, and everything in here is what happens, right? But you can also write a function as starting it with a variable, right? So var battle equals function, like that. And either way, battle is a function, right? Now this is tends to be the way that's taught more frequently. And I do like it for a number of different reasons that we'll talk about later. But for now, let's just look at it. So what is going to happen in the battle is really what we have to ask ourselves. When this function is run, what is going to happen? Now, in the most basic sense, if we want to say the hero is the first one to attack, Han shot first. There's a Star Wars reference for you guys. Then we would say that monster, you can say monster dot health equals monster dot health minus hero dot attack. Okay, that line actually doesn't do a whole lot that you can see. Now it does the math. It sets the value of monster dot health, which is this, to equal monster dot health minus hero attack, which in this case would mean the new value of monster dot health, or the property value of this, would be 190. But it doesn't tell the user anything. We don't know that it's happening. So at the very least, if we're going to start looking at this actually happening, we can log it in the console. And this would, of course, not be for the user. It'd be for the programmer, for us. But still, this function doesn't do anything. Now, as I save, it's defined but never used. We don't care about use strict for now. And this is missing semicolon. So we're gonna, we're gonna watch the semicolons, but we're not gonna worry about use strict, and we're certainly not gonna worry about battle is defined but never used. Okay. In order to get a function to go, we've got to call it. So the simple option here is to just do battle. Okay. And then put the parentheses on the end of it, and that function will happen. It will get called, and I know that by testing it. So I'm going to go over here, and instead of constantly going open in browser and opening up a bunch of tabs, if I save my document here and it is saved, then all I have to do is refresh the page. So if I refresh it, nothing happened. Actually, something did. It's in the console here in our browser. Now, if you're looking at this going, hey, Mr. Kozart, how do you get your console to be on the bottom? There's these dots here, and you can actually change where the bottom is. You can undock into a separate window, which is actually pretty useful. Dock to the left, dock to the bottom, dock to the right. And any one of these things is going to do a number of different things. We're not going to get into all that. But the console helps us see what's actually happening mathematically or in terms of strings, whatever we might be doing behind the scenes. So it went to 190, but we can't repeatedly do that, right? We can't repeatedly do battle unless we use either a button to continuously run that function and reapply it, or if we use a loop. So I'm going to make a loop. And I'm going to use a for loop. And I'm going to say for I, which is just a variable we're creating right now, and it sets it to 0. Then I'm going to terminate it with a semicolon. And then I'm going to say something interesting. Now, if I wanted this loop to run a certain number of times, I would just say while I is less than 3 if I wanted it to run x, 3 number of times, or 3 times. But I'm actually going to use hero dot speed, which in this case is the same as saying 3. So while I is less than 3, And then I'm going to I++, which means every time this loop runs, it's going to add to I, which means it won't go infinitely. And every time the loop runs, it's going to add to I, which means this loop should run however many times speed is in terms of the number, right? So now let's refresh. So I've saved my code here, Control S, and I bring it back up, and there we go, 190, 180, 170. Okay, so he attacked 3 times based on this guy's speed. And now it's 180, 190, 170, or 190, 180, 170. And so that's a loop. But we don't have any control over when that runs. So what's kind of interesting is we could write another function that would happen, kind of on click, right? So on click, we could write this out to happen. So I'm going to actually nest a loop inside a function, right here. And so we could call this anything, but we're going to do var attack equals function. And then, of course, be careful to put your brackets around where they go. And tab this in, and then we're going to just back this up here. So put your brace there, and we're good. And you can always click on your braces in Dreamweaver, and it'll show you kind of what's going on. And indent properly. So we've got that indented there, that indented there. Now, attack is currently not being called. In the way that we want to call that is by coming over here to source code, and we're going to use either content or the warrior image. So I can actually use the image itself as an object, use on click, and we're going to just say attack. And that will then allow us to click on the warrior and get that result. And so now we've incorporated some key components. So we've got objects, we've got variables, we have an array, which isn't doing anything yet. We'll come back to that in the next section. And we've got a function. We've got a loop, which is now in here. So I'll put that in there. And another function with a loop and a function inside that loop. So we've got a function out here that runs a loop that runs a function. And of course, this loop is going to run as many times as the hero has speed. So for example, if I bump his speed up to like 8 and save that, and then I pop back over to here, it goes 8 times. So I can kind of dictate based on some variability what what the number of attacks is in this case. So that's that.